let's get over to the desk. Let's have a chat. It's time to get things off our chest. It's time to share some things that I found with you guys. Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and welcome to the library. I'm Tennessee Fats, and I'm coming to you from the desk today, doing something, well, a little different, and I'm not even going to do this as one of our regular videos. We're going to shoot this one out midweek, but this is to answer one of the questions I get fairly regularly, which is, Tennessee Fats, what are you reading right now? I do actually get asked that because people oftentimes will look at the library that's sitting behind our opening shots, and they see stuff in there, and they'll think, well, what's in there? And what else do you do besides Conan? I do read a lot of stuff other than Conan, and this last 2-week period has actually been a very heavy reading period for me. And within that, I said, well, let's share. So this is what we're doing today. We're going to do this part in 3 segments. The first part is we're going to talk about a little bit of a snafu that I got myself into with regards to that cupboard over there. We'll talk about it, okay? But within that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share 3 titles, not 2, but 3 titles that I would particularly encourage you guys to pick up and read that are being published right now as ongoing series. If you're into comics and you are interested in maybe some of that stuff, you'll enjoy that segment. The second part of this one is we're going to walk through a book I just finished, which I found fascinating. And I'm going to anecdotally share the stupid way that I got led down this garden path that actually made me pick this book up again and finish it, because I had previously completely forgotten it. Glad I went back to this one. The last segment we're going to do today is we're going to walk through some books that I'm reading, which are actually becoming somewhat painful right now for me to read, but we got to finish them, that are part of an upcoming video idea that I'm going to work on. That's sort of a teaser for those of you who are interested, and it's to give you an idea. Maybe you want to keep an eye out for that one when it's released. All right, without any further ado, let's get into segment 1. All right, let's get into the situation. You know, I say the situation this way just because I like to say situation, because I love the show Jersey Shore. I know it's incredibly stupid. Listen, don't judge me, okay? We all have our things. I set this shot up intentionally to give you guys a sense of scope, and I don't actually think it's doing it justice. The reason why is because what you're seeing here is part of the situation that I got into, but you need to understand the visual aspect of this is only about half of the actual problem. Let's get this out of the way here. It's just in the way, and I'm gonna move it. Boot here. Plastic bags do not slide well on leather. And I did, for the record, just say a boot in case any of you are curious and you're keeping track of my Canadian moments. Thank you, Canada. Here's the deal. I got myself into a bit of a snafu. And here's what happened. For any of you who are comic collectors, and I am a comic collector like you, okay? We're all on the same boat. If you're on this channel and you're watching this video, we read comics, okay? If you're a comic collector, you're out there in the local comic shop, and things happen. You know, it's free comic book day, and everything's $1, and you say to yourself, hey, I'm just going to go deep dive in here, because that could be fun. Another thing that could happen is you're out there picking up your pull list, and one of the guys at the shop says, hey, have you thought about reading this title? And things end up in the house. In addition to that, you've got the regular pull issues, which you read because those are the ones you like to read the most. Well, do we ever actually stay on top of these things? It's one of these things where we're almost our own worst enemy. Now, I am quite OCD when it comes to storing and putting away my comics. I will admit that. But pretty much once every year, I will do something incredibly stupid. And it's not that I do it once a year, it's that it builds up for a year. In the cupboard of doom over there, and you can't see it because I don't want it in the shot. I'm very angry with the cupboard of doom. It's like a black hole. Comics go in there and they just die. They just don't come out. So the cupboard of doom, 8 entire years worth of purchases, just sitting in there, waiting to be read and put away. A couple weeks ago, I looked at it, and my peanut-sized brain had a small freak out on me, and it just said, no, Tennessee Fats, you can't. What is the point of being a comic collector? And what is the point of buying comics to read if you're not going to read them? So the little angry voice in the back of my head scolded me thoroughly, which is quite funny because it is actually my own voice I hear in my head when it's scolding me. And I went through a 2-week long process of reading, bagging, and boarding. and I am an incredibly slow reader. I've mentioned this to you guys on numerous occasions, so that was a fairly large investment of time. The result of that, though, is I now have 4 boxes of comics over here beside the desk, which are now bagged, boarded, and ready to go back and get processed into the collection. And I'm very happy to do this, and I'm very happy that that cupboard is now taken care of. The things that are actually left in the cupboard are things that are there intentionally because they're going to be in upcoming videos, and I need those with ready access right here because I'm too lazy to run up and downstairs. So that's the problem I got myself into. A year's worth of comics is 4 boxes, and I know there was some large things within that which led to that 4 boxes being the 4 boxes. Typically a year's worth of comics is a lot less than that for me, but this time there were things in there. But things happen along the way, and within that there was a lot of reading of old and new. Now I have actually made notes on a lot of the old, and the reason why I've done that is because I've enjoyed them so much. I'm going to set them up for upcoming videos that we're going to talk about, and they're going to talk about, it's not going to be Conan, it's not going to be Savage Sword. It actually relates to another character that's one of my favorite comic characters, and that's Clark Kent. Superman. Like, we all love Superman. It's just a thing. You either, well, I don't even know how you could not like Superman. I know how you could, a lot of people look at Superman and they can say, well, you know, the stories are somewhat trite because really what character growth can there be in somebody who can do everything? But there is actually a fair amount of fun that can be done with these. There are 3 new series, though, that I want to talk about today that I want to point you guys in the direction of. If you're following my channel, you know what my tastes are. And if you're following me, it's probably because you have similar tastes to me in comics. The first one of these is very much related to a sword and sorcery type story. And so is the last one. So the first one I've already made a short on, and I put the short on this one out, and it deals with the first issue of this because I read it and I was so floored. And it's this. And that's Aquaman #1. It's a 2025 reboot series. It's the all-in thing. This is the post-Dark Side. Well, we set that aside. If you really want to know, go read it. It's really an interesting one. The only reason I bought this was because the guy at the shop said to me, hey, listen, this is like, you know, this guy fighting giant kaiju with a water sword. And issue 1 was very much like that. Very sword and sorcery type mystique to it. The problem was is I picked up the subsequent issues of that because I added it to my pull list after I read issue #1. It went into the cupboard of doom and never came out. Well, I've now read the subsequent issues. It's up to issue #5 now. Yeah, issue #5. I'll show you the latest issue cover right there, at least as of the recording of this video. This story has developed in a very interesting way. Arthur has found himself now transported to a whole water realm. He's fighting Dagon. Now, Dagon, for any of you who are Lovecraftian, that name means something. You know what I'm talking about. And the funny part about it is that name is also referenced in one of my absolute favorite Savage Sword of Conan comics ever. And I actually made a video about that. And if you want, I'll put a link down in the description below. You can click on that. But he's fighting him. What's even more interesting, though, and this is the twist of this. So I've been reading this Warlord comic. I put out a video about that recently, and the reason I got into Warlord was because I was trying to dive down into the whole area of Atlantis. Guess who shows up in issue #2? Arian of Atlantis. You're suddenly drawing in more sword and sorcery now. It's really becoming quite interesting, and the way they're reintroducing older character like Lori Lamaris from Superman mythos, and they've even gone to the point of bringing in Captain Nemo from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This is getting really, really cool. If you're interested in sort of that sort of mishmash of, we'll just call it sort of a sword and sorcery type Atlantean type mystique, this is a pretty cool run, and I would encourage you to head out and pick it up. You might want to wait for a trade paperback if you think that you want to go the cheaper route, but I can tell you, I've been picking up the individual books. They've been really, really cool. Okay, now the next one here probably shouldn't be too much a surprise. Because I've already referenced the fact that I'm going to make a Superman video later about some of the older stories that I've been picking up. So I think it's fairly clear that if I am going to be picking up a new run, it's probably going to be Superman related. And it is. It's this. That's Absolute Superman #1. Now, I could only get, when this came out, because I got on the boat fairly late on this one, I could only get this black and white or noir edition. So I didn't get a color edition of this comic, and I'm not out buying multiple copies of comics. I'll just take one to read. Thank you very much. So I started into this one, and I tell you, I went into this somewhat, what would be the word I would use? I guess hesitantly. And I only picked up the first couple issues. So I said, okay, fine, I'm going to give this a go and see what I think. And the reason why was because, again, I'm at the local, and this is the power of a local comic shop and actually talking to the people that work there when they know enough of what your tastes are. And they said, Tennessee fans, you would actually enjoy this. Effectively, Superman is this sort of enviro hippie, and he's basically running around beating up corporations. And I thought, Superman enviro hippie beating up really? And I was like, I'm like, I don't know. And besides all the humming and hawing, I said, fine, I'll buy the first 2 issues. And I did. Well, I finished them. I'll show you issue number 1 again. And here's issue number 2 as well. Now, I'll tell you what floors me with this and where I think this is going really, really, really well. And I'm going to give you guys a quick summary here of what the context is. And you can decide whether you're interested in it yourself, okay? The context here is it's almost like a what-if story, an Elseworld sort of story, where Clark has come to Earth, but he's come to Earth basically as a teenager, or basically a tween. Would you call him a tween? I guess he was a tween. It's kind of hard to gauge what age he was. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is he gets to Earth somewhat older. He's actually been alive long enough on Krypton to actually be there for the demise of it. He's experienced the loss of his parents, the loss of his dog, the loss of the entire planet, and then went through this terrorizing isolation all the way to Earth to come here and find himself, well, still on the Kent farm, but older, and suffering through the acclimatization to the Earth's yellow sun, where he basically, and there's a comment that he makes within this, where the planet literally makes him want to claw his own flesh off of his body, because he feels like it's burning. And he has this nanotechnology Kryptonian suit named Sol that he talks to. Effectively, the Earth has been taken over by Ra's al Ghul in conjunction with Brainiac. And it's this weird, twisted planet where it's a police state. And Clark is just trying to make his way through the Earth and just try to get along. But because it's a police state, everything's documented and he's an anomaly. So the police kind of have a problem with him. Ergo, where you get this sort of space enviro hippie thing beating up corporations, because that's really what the police state enacts its policies with, is with corporations. I've gotten up to issue number, what am I up to on this one now? Number 7? Number 7. I'll show you the latest issue over here, which focuses more on Brainiac. This story is going really well writing-wise, and I'll tell you why. There are certain issues within this which have so little Clark and Superman content because they're taking their time to build up the background information. They're really doing a great job of world building. And I would strongly encourage, if you're interested in sort of a different take on Superman, because we really haven't gotten too much of a sense of what's going on in his mind yet. You're just getting a sense of the world around him. This is a really interesting character study, and if you like Superman, you would definitely enjoy this one. So I would encourage you to pick up Absolute Superman. I think it's going fairly well. Okay, now it's time for the last one. This one draws back more into Sword and Sorcery and Savage Sword and all sort of stuff, and probably speaks more to the regular viewers on this channel. Here's the deal, guys. If you stuck around this far, you're actually willing to listen to my suggestions, and I thank you for that. This one's an interesting one, and I'll tell you, this one I went into full-blown begrudgingly, and I only bought 2 issues, the same as when I picked up this Absolute Superman issues. And the reason why was because, again, at the local comic shop, individual there tells me, well, it's like Diana's raised in hell, and she learns magic. And I'm thinking, I'm not too sure, but here, I'll put the image up over here. This is Absolute Superman number 1. This is the cover that I got. And I picked up issue number 1 and 2. And I sat down to read this one. And this is one of the most recent books, comics that I've actually read, because this was at the end of the pile, because I kept pushing it off, because I was like, this is not going to be good. I was dead wrong. This is really, really good. Now again, I'm only 2 issues in. But this is not Diana being raised in hell. Diana, and it's an interesting twist here, where all of the Amazonians are gone. I'm not going to tell you why. And I'm sure we'll get more into this as the story continues. And Diana is taken away and given to Circe on her wild island. Now, Circe, for those of you who know, if you're into Greek mythology and you like the Homeric epics, you know who Circe is. And in fact, very interestingly, Circe also appeared when we did the review of Clifford Brown's books. I believe it was Clifford Brown. Yeah, it was Clifford Brown. And Circe made an appearance in that. Circe is a very interesting character, and I don't want to spoil too much of this one for you guys. What I'm going to tell you is, the Amazonians' job in this particular Elseworld type story is to protect the world from monsters. And because there are no Amazonians, Diana's the last one left. But she hasn't been raised by the Amazonians with all of this virtuous righteousness to her. She's been raised by Circe, who is a witch that's been done wrong by the gods. So there's some bitterness to it, but she has harnessed all of the magic that Circe knows. it's really an interesting mix of the sort of I'm a great warrior, sort of Diana, Wonder Woman type story, but with magic at the same time. It's like, I don't know, Doctor Strange mixed with the Incredible Hulk in some sort of strange way. There's my Marvel analogy for you guys. It's really going well. When I put down issue number 2, I went, damn it, why didn't I buy more of these? Well, now I'm stopping, okay? Because I know if I continue to go down this road, I'm going to end up just putting this in the pull list, and it's going to go really, really well. And I'm stopping for, well, a variety of reasons. I don't want my reading pile just and I've already got too much in it as it is with the dedication to Superman. For those of you who are interested in more of a sword and sorcery type Wonder Woman story, absolute Wonder Woman, by all means go pick it up. You will not regret it. Okay, let's get into the literary piece here. Now, we've talked comics. Now it's time to talk about a book. It's time to put on our big boy pants and actually talk about a written book. We have to imagine pictures in our heads. Here's the thing. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you, number 1. But number 2, you're here because you probably know I ramble a fair amount. And this is an odd rambling story, what actually led to me picking this one up. But I find it funny because I never would have found this otherwise. Okay. Bear with me, okay? Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share the book with you right now. I'm going to put the image up over here, okay? And this book is called The Great Siege by Arnold Bradford. And it was written in the early 1960s, okay? Now, how did I get here? This is a weird one, because you say, Tennessee Fats, really? Why? How? Oh, again, bear with the lunacy here, because life finds a way. So last year, I'm on a Mediterranean cruise. And don't assume I'm on Mediterranean cruises all the time. I'm not. This was the first cruise I've actually ever been on. It's the first time I've been on the Mediterranean. And it's the first time I've been to Malta. But the bottom line was I was there. And being on this cruise, which unfortunately has a very finite timeline, I only had a very short period of time to learn more about Malta. As a student of history, everywhere I was going, I was immediately running to historic sites that I knew. Malta is almost an undocumented site for the most part, up until about 1560-ish. I'm going to say that just from what I've learned within this book and what I learned while I was actually on the island. While I was there, I wanted to check out a bunch of things. A, I had coffee and pastry because that's what I do. B, I went into Valette, which is where we actually berthed on the cruise. And while we were there, I went into something called the Grand Master's Palace. And the Grand Master's Palace is in the site where I guess it used to be St. Elmo's fort was. Of course, it was destroyed during the Great Siege that was referenced in that book. And this new fort was put in place. If you want to see what was originally there, I guess you probably need to go underground to find what's left. But anyways, I went through the Grand Master's Palace to learn more about the history of the place, not knowing anything about any of these forts or anything of the sort, just saying, how do I learn about where I am? And I went into this armory room, and I'm going to show you some images up here, and I'm going to keep them going. These are things I saw when I was there, and as a North American, I was absolutely floored by this. See, in North America, we don't get to see this stuff, at least not in the condition like it's like here. And the reason for that is because the stuff that did make its way here was destroyed because it was used in whatever war or whatever it was you were doing here at the time. Everything went into the mud, into the dirt, very little survived. Over there, and particularly in Malta, all of this stuff is brand new stuff from the 1600s and later. It's just never seen use. So it's just been steadily taken care of for a couple hundred years. It was flooring. And reading more about it, I'm like, I'm sorry, there was a what? A siege? A who? Who? What? Why? Who was sieging what? So I went to the gift shop and I picked up this book. And this is the book once again. It's written by Arnold Bradford. And it was written in the early 60s. From oral and written accounts that he found when he was researching things in the Great Siege in Malta itself. So how did I get here? Well, I was reading this thing in the evenings on the cruise. I came back home and life got in the way and it went into the to be read pile and I never touched it since. Then, well, this is the level of stupidity. And don't judge me, okay? I have enough judgment. I'm watching The Curse of Oak Island. And you could say a lot of things about The Curse of Oak Island. And I would say watching is actually a loose phrase for it. I fast forward through new episodes of The Curse of Oak Island every week to pick up the important parts where I think they're making conclusions and sort of scratch my head at them. I don't know why. And then I just move on. One of the latest things that they've come up with is because they found a pickaxe at a certain depth in a hole, they decided, well, since pickaxes were also used in Malta, clearly the Knights of Malta are the ones that put the treasure in Oak Island. Now, many of the viewers of this channel are probably going to be saying to themselves, well, hold on, Tennessee Pass. They use pickaxes everywhere. I know that, and you know that. But no, it doesn't matter. They've determined that the Knights of Malta have done this because they use pickaxes similar to this to dig holes in Malta. So, it suddenly triggered my mind. I went, wait, I have a book about Malta. I never read that book. I didn't finish it. So I went back, I picked it up, and I read it from beginning to end, and holy poop, am I glad I did. Arnold Bradford did a fantastic job on this book, and you got to bear in mind the difficulties he would have had in collecting source data for this. You have contemporary historians writing about the Great Siege, which, by the way, is an attack by Suleiman, I think it's the Magnificent, not Suleiman the Great, on Malta. And Malta is a recently founded, I'm going to call it Knights of Malta, even though they were called the Knights of the Order of St. John at the time. The Knights of Malta had recently been moved there and founded for a variety of reasons, and you can read the book and find out more about that yourself. And Suleiman says, no, I really don't like these Knights of Malta to begin with, number one, because I defeated them once already. Number two, they're in my way, because I want to use Malta as my staging place so I can then move on and attack Venice and then go up into Italy. Or down into Italy. I guess it's down in Italy. That doesn't matter. Anyways, he says, this is what I want to do, and these Knights of Malta are in the way. So I'm going to send out a attacking force of 200 ships with 40,000 individuals to attack them. The Knights of Malta had only been there for a couple of years at this point in time, building up fortifications in this one little inlet. And also introducing themselves to the inhabitants, because you got to understand, the Knights of Malta at this point in time have just been forced into this island by the King of Spain, and the inhabitants are like, well, hold on, we already run this island. And the Knights of Malta come in and said, no, we now run this island. So they were actually an invading force themselves, which is kind of not really covered in the book, but we're going to move past that. The 600 to 700 knights with their 9,000, we'll call Maltese regulars, and regulars within their own Knights of Malta order, had to fight off this giant invading force. And when Ernle being the author of the book, and I hope I'm saying that correctly, E-R-N-L-E, when he was writing this book, all he had were contemporary sources that deal with the way they used to write history back then, which was, well, you know, this is the king and this is what he did. This is the leaders, this is what they did. This is what the politicians did. Oh, this famous, really well-respected guy did this. But nobody really sits down and writes contemporaneously about the commoners and what they did. So you gotta understand, when Ernle was collecting data on this, all he was getting was stories of Suleiman's basically generals and Suleiman's, I guess, advisors. And you had the leaders of the Knights of Malta and the government officials that dealt with them, but that was basically it. You don't really get any detail about the poor individuals that were suffering and that were the unintentional casualties of this siege, which were the people of Malta. Now, it's fascinating, and we've changed the way we do history a fair amount since the 60s now, where more of the oral histories that carried down from the Siege of Malta, that have carried the stories of their heroes, are now probably being documented. At least I hope they are. Because there's actually even reference within here where Ernle says, listen, you got to understand, guys, I've given you the best information I got, but there's oral histories of these famous swimmers and other people that do these fantastic jobs, but I just don't have any documentary evidence of it. And that, I would say, is the one fault of the story. The one fault of the writing is it doesn't deal enough with that, but that's not his fault. The source material could only go so far. What the story does do, though, is it does a wonderful job explaining this piece and this vignette in history. This is actually a very important vignette in history, and as a North American that never studied this, I didn't know this, and I'm glad I know it now. So forget the Curse of Oak Island noise, set that aside completely. What have we learned here? Fascinating piece of history where you've got these Knights of Malta that set up these 3 basic encampments and taught a master class in siege warfare and what not to do to Suleiman's army, who were continuing to throw everything they could at this and just couldn't take it down. Now, there were factors at play here that really hamstrung Suleiman's army, which was actually mostly the faults of the generals and the structure that was set up to govern them. But that's another story. So if any of you are interested in siege warfare, if you're interested in learning about, well, this knight did this, oh, they did this type of embattlement, oh, they did this to defend themselves, this is really a very good point to start with. Not only is it going to teach you that, but it's going to teach you a fair amount about European history of who were the main players and what was going on in around the middle of the 1600s, which is an era that I don't know that much about. Well, if you're interested, I hope you pick this one up and I hope you enjoy it, because I'm going to tell you, I did. about the painful part now. Okay, listen. Here's the thing. Part of me shooting these videos is, well, there's a lot of reading involved. And as we continue to go through this video, more and more things are ending up on the desk here. So bear with me because, well, I needed coffee, number one. And number two, I needed to share with you what I'm actually working towards going forward. So let's start with what I'm reading going forward that has nothing to do with the video. And this is just me reading for my own enjoyment. And it's actually this book, Mexican Gothic. I picked this up and I read okay, here's the story of what led to this. And if you guys want to know how this is, let me know down in the comments and I'll do a review of this one for you as well. Probably a little more detailed than the Siege of Malta because I didn't want to go too far into that one because, well, there's reasons. Anyway, Mexican Gothic. Interesting that this was actually suggested to me by the editor that did the Universal Monsters Dracula series. Because I wrote a letter in and I said, you're doing a great job with Gothic. And they said, oh, you got to read Mexican Gothic because it's just... So I bought it. I picked up the back of this thing, read the actual here's about the book. I was actually intending on reading this while I was on my cruise that I referenced in segment 2 of this video. But it scared the crap out of me. And I said, do I really want to be reading something that's going to be scary? Gothic does get me. I'll admit that. And I said, no. So I didn't. Now that I'm back home and I'm safe, that's the next one I'm going to be reading, Mexican Gothic. Looking forward to that. That should be interesting. Following that actually is going to be... No. If you want to know what's following that, send me a message. Okay. As for the books that I'm reading right now, which are proving to be somewhat painful, I'm going to move this one out of the way. As many of you know, one of the things that we do here on the Tennessee Fast channel is we support the works of Jack Kirby. We like Jack Kirby here. Jack Kirby as a comic guy, he's good. Let's just put it that way. And a book that I read a while back was the Jack Kirby book. And I did a quick review on this, and I'll put a link to the video down in the description for you. And within that, it's a very interesting autobiographical comic story of Jack Kirby's life, which I think is a really clever way to bring the message of what Jack went through and his life to the comic readers. Because if you're already reading comics, why wouldn't you put it in comic format? You're just talking to your reader. It makes sense. A follow-up book to that one, though, is this one, I Am Stan. And it's actually sitting right here on the desk right now. And I gotta tell you, I wanted to get both points of view on this. Now, bear in mind that Tom Scioli, I guess I'm saying that correctly, that's the author of both of these. He was being as impartial as possible, using source data as much as he can. And he does footnote his references throughout. So when I read both of these, I kind of went back and went, there's a reason why. One of the creations of the I got the Ernal name stuck on my tongue right now, so I'm blurring everything. One of the creations from back in the 60s with Marvel Comics has always sort of stuck in my craw. And it stuck in my craw even more so when I was watching an interview with Stan Lee. And he said, well, but I want them to fight like a family does. And that's literally his sense. And he was explaining how he had steered so much into the creation of this particular title because he wanted them to fight. And when you read issue 1 of this and you read Stan's narrative within it, you can see where he's done that. And there's references within that I would argue make no sense. But in an upcoming video, I'm going to dive more into that. But I'll tell you, this is the one that I'm reading right now that's being somewhat painful. And it's in support of that particular topic. Doom Patrol. I don't know how many of you out there have read Doom Patrol, the original Doom Patrol comics. I picked up a couple individual issues and I said, okay, well, I'm going to buy these. But then, fortunately, DC decided to put out a collection or trade paperback of most of their work. And I'm going through this now to say, well, is this relevant to my topic or isn't it? Because I secretly suspect that it is. Here's the deal. Oh my God, these are difficult to read comics. These stories and the stuff within them are just, If this is one of the founding super teams of that era, I actually am floored that they actually got off the ground and made super teams. If this is one of the founding ones that got out there, because I would think that the public would go, oh my God, I'm done. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just me and the way I read comics, and this is just not speaking to me correctly. That could be the case. I don't know. But if any of you are out there and you're considering picking up the Doom Patrol trade paperback saying, I want to read this, don't. If you have a real reason to do so, you can skip this one. You don't need to read it. Ugh. Just. Ugh. Bad taste in your mouth. Alright, let's wrap this bad boy up. I'll tell you, this was a fun one for me because it wasn't me going out and reading a bunch of stuff because I had an idea of this is the video I'm going to make and this is what I need to put together. This was a case of, hey, let's just talk about what I'm reading right now. And the first 2 segments in this 3-segment video, because we do everything in 3s now, were just stuff that I've read because I like it. And that's I have no problem sharing what I like because now I'm actually passionate about it because I've spent my own money on it. This is me being happy and this is what I read in my spare time. And again, I would say to you, if you're looking for a new title to pick up, I'm biased. I'm a Clark guy. If you do go out there and you want yourself some Superman, Absolute Superman is going really, really, really well. We'll just say that. Aquaman? Make sure you're invested in the character before you go down that road, because that's going John Wick speed. The writing in that is low, action high. Writing in Absolute Superman, high, action, well, also somewhat high, but second place to the writing. And if you're interested in something that's sort of like a sword and sorcery type mix, I would say the Absolute or Wonder Woman was going in the right direction, at least up to issue 2, which is where I stopped. That is a phenomenally interesting story, and I did enjoy that. So if you're interested, cool beans, head down that road. If you're interested in even the historical period, which is what I dove into with that Siege of Malta book, that thing was really well done. And in closing, I'm just going to say this about it. If you're interested in that period of history, and if you're looking for something that's going to keep your attention and be a page turner while it's covering a dry historic content, Arnold Bradford did a great job on that one. I would strongly encourage you to get yourself an, because you don't need to go to Malta to buy this book. Don't do what I did. Go and get this thing on Amazon or wherever you can get it, because it was really, really well done. That last segment there, well, I gave you guys a bit of a vignette as to what's coming next. You can guess, but we're just going to leave it there, okay? Everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you in the next one.